Hello everyone, this is Alien Reddit Stories, where I tell alien stories off of Reddit. Story number 1. This is my encounter experience. I'll probably be scattered talking about this. For 1, I'm high. And for 2, if I really focus on my details and visuals, I won't sleep. So here goes. I was around 9 years old. Parents were still together and lived in a beautiful log and stone house my dad had to help build in 1992. My room was on the 3rd floor and was approximately 20 by 12 feet, huge, with a skylight perched in the ceiling, looking at nothing but sky. My bed was at the time set on the other side of the room as the skylight. I remember watching TV till about 10:30 that night before climbing the stairs and going to sleep. I wake up really startled and sit up in my bed. Looking directly ahead, I see multiple colors coming from the skylight and ending up on my wall. Purple, green, yellow, red, just flashing. I don't remember any sounds that accompany this. I got really nervous in my bed and quickly lay down, throwing the covers over my head as I do. I close my eyes so tight and I'm breathing so hard. I sit straight up in the bed again, exactly feeling as the first time, not knowing what woke me or had already happened. And directly under the skylight were lights were still flashing, but much slower against my wall. Eye level on the other side of my room stands a pale green/gray almond shaped eyes that took up most of his huge elongated face and large head. This is all I see. I distinctly remember passing out next. I wake up looking over my covers as I was still laying down at this time, being at the edge of my bed, so close that it was inches away from my feet. No sound came from it the entire time. I see no nose, just kind of indentation/slits where it should be, and hair like lips. No shape or weight. I wake up the next day, go to school. It was a normal day. I don't remember any of this until I just wake up remembering it. When I think about it, it was about 13, and my parents were splitting, and we were out of that house already. I'm not going to be able to sleep. That's exactly what happened to my memory, and I've only told a couple of people. Dear Lord, thanks for sharing that. Story number 2. Growing up, my father was in the military, and we moved about every 3 years. One of my earliest memories was at a base at China Lake, California. I slept in the same room as my 2 brothers. They were 14 and 11 at the time. I woke up one morning with my pajamas unzipped to about my belly button, and in the center of my chest were 3 copper-colored wires sticking out. My brothers were at school, and I was completely alone. They were perfectly straight, like pencil lead, and anchored into my chest. I tried to take them out, but they hurt, and my hands couldn't grip anything because they felt extremely weak. I started crying and ran out of the room to my dad. He couldn't get them out with his hands either, and then got a pair of pliers, laid me on the kitchen table, and pulled them out one by one. Never spoke of it again. My dad doesn't remember that ever happening, but it was so vivid and real. A couple years later, we were on Camp Pendleton. I had a TV mounted on the far wall in my room, and I set it on a timer, turn off when I fell asleep. One night I woke up when my TV turned on and saw 2 silhouettes, one right next to my bed looking at me, and the other across my room standing under my TV, looking at my dinner from the previous night. I was so scared. I didn't even try to move. I just sat there hoping to fall asleep, and I did a couple seconds later. I blame it on sleep paralysis now, but my most intense fear is still aliens. Fire in the Sky is the scariest effing movie ever. Story number 3. I was out fishing with my dad at a reservoir, and we saw bright lights just spinning around in the sky over the weekend. Upon going back to school on Monday, we had a scientist who met with all the kids at an assembly. I was in 1st grade. He asked everyone to raise their hands if they saw something. About 50 kids or so, including me, came forward. We were then interviewed about what we saw. We all described a similar object. I never heard one thing about this after it happened. This occurred around 1982 or 83. Next story. Nothing bombastic or anything, to be fair, but here goes. Last summer, I went to a party in the southern side of Lisbon, which was somewhat far from where I live. I rarely go to these things, but that night I was psyched to get it with this girl. I mean, to have a good time. Understandable. There's 5 of us, me and another guy and 3 girls. We get there. I park my car and off we go to where the party is at. On our way, we're all chit-chatting, but the girls are a bit behind us. Me and my bud see a small group of people looking at the sky, and by reflex, so do we look at it. To my surprise, there's an object in the distance, high up in the sky, flashing lights as bright as a goddamn football stadium, either or of the foothills in red and green patterns. And F me, that thing was moving in any which direction it felt like, without any sense of needing propulsion, just changing directions at will. Me and my mate couldn't believe it. You know that feeling at the back of your skull that something is off? We were feeling it. We kept telling our girlfriends that something odd was in the sky, and they couldn't care less. So bizarre, considering whatever it was no copper or plane, for goddamn sure. After a while of incredulity, the object decided it was tired of being fabulous, and sped off into the distance like a shooting star. Tried making photos of this with my phone, but to no avail. It only looked like a effing candlelight or something. Next story. A few years back, I wanted to say 2010, I was driving around the county roads of rural Illinois with my best friend. She and I have driven these roads since we were 16, and we know them like the back of our hands. We're out on Route 40, just north of where I used to work, driving like we always around dusk. And I look out the window. About 2 miles up the road, I see something hovering above this farmhouse. And I just think, oh, it's part of the windmill they have out back. The closer we get, though, I start to realize it's too big to be part of the windmill. I swear it was like slow motion as we drive past it, above the fields. More so on the house. There was a silver object suspended over the land. It was almost like a cigar or a zeppelin shape. I couldn't even give an example of the exact size, though, just because of how high it was up. After a second, I said to my buddy, is that what I think it is? She had been staring at it too and just managed to say, no one's going to believe us. And it just shot off in the other direction. We started going on UFO hunts after that. Edit. Oh my god, I totally forgot. When I was in senior high school, I started to complain about this zit I couldn't get to pop on my back. It felt really deep, and after weeks of complaining, my mom took me to the doctor. He felt it as said there was a foreign object in my body, and with one of his doctor's tools cut me open. I was numbed, of course. It was about 3 inches to the left of my spine and about halfway down my back. If left, not a little more. I remember him saying, "What is that?" Which is not something I want to hear from him. And he pulled it up with long tweezer things and showed me this dark gray, sort of shiny object that was perfectly circular with little indentations in it. He tried to tell my mom I must have been shot with a BB gun or something, and it was working its way out of my body. But I know for a fact I had never been shot before. Try not to think about it, because it weirds me out. And he wouldn't let me keep it. Yeah, you should have said something. Final story. It happened this year to me. Here's a cut and paste of what I submitted to the National UFO Reporting Center. I can honestly say, you don't feel lucky to see a UFO because you realize soon after, you will never really get a chance to resolve it, and you're just left wondering. National UFO Reporting Center sighting report occurred 6/5/2013, 2200 hours 45 minutes. Entered as 6/5/13/2245, reported 7/8/2013, 1:55:29 p.m. 13:55 posted. Okay, it's just a bunch of more dates and stuff. I'm not going to go through all that. My family and I were visiting my wife's family in Wardsboro, Vermont, from our home in New Hampshire, for the extended 4th of July holiday. I was standing outside their front door with my father-in-law at approximately 10:45. Through a V in the tree line, looking toward Mount Snow's direction, we both saw a large, bright white orb appear and move slowly across the sky from left to right. It was about 30 feet above the tree line and below the clouds. It appeared to be about 20 feet in diameter, best guess, and glowed pure white. As we watched it, we started trying to determine what it was. Our first guess was fireworks, as it was the day after the 4th. But there was no flare to the light. It was just shined a solid white like a super bright LED lantern. It also seemed to move too slowly to be a firework or an aircraft. And there was no sound at all. As Wardsboro in a valley, usually you can hear things such as thunder and planes louder than you normally would. But this was pure silence. About 5 seconds it approached a low dim star and it disappeared by quickly fading. My father and I continued to ask each other what it was we just saw. As we were discussing it, we saw another identical white orb appear in the same spot the first one did, and it also moved at the same speed, direction, and path and disappeared where the original one had. After the second orb faded, we could no longer see the dim star that was in the direction they were headed. After researching online, there's a chance that we may have been ball lightning. However, I'm not sure that they appear in pairs like that. I've also read that ball lightning cracks loudly when it disappears, and it experienced silence throughout this. The only other detail I would add is during the first orb's travel, I felt an unordinary fluttering sensation in my back. There was front light was on, and there were large flying insects around it, so I assumed it was a large flying insect that was flying into my back, or had gotten under the back of my t-shirt for a minute, but also felt like a mild spasm. I was reaching around to brush my back as I didn't want to take my eyes off what I was seeing. I'm not assuming that it was anything to do with that. What we saw, I just want to make sure that there's a full accounting. Well, sir, thank you for your full account. Where do I begin? Okay, that's a really good story. I like everything about this story. It's Vermont, New Hampshire, very eerie mountains out there. Anything to do with the Appalachians and the far east coast, it's just all trees, hills. It's God's country really out there. My God, beautiful. And where there's very few people tend to be an uptick in phenomena. Call it whatever you want. Call it whatever phenomena you want. Aliens, any other unseen beings, whatever you want to call them. Cryptozoological creatures, all the above. There's a high propensity to be sightings out there. Very good story. I don't like that orb. I don't like that it was just reappearing in the exact spot. I know the ball lightning you're talking about. It's almost like those little fireballs that Reptile throws in Mortal Kombat 2. The ones that go bam 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 bam. It just floats. It kind of pops. It's not ball lightning. You would know. Those things are small. This thing is 20 feet wide, 20 meters wide. That's not a ball lightning, and it's moving in repeated patterns like that. No, sir. I don't know what that was, but the story that really got me was that little kid that was in the giant 20-foot ceiling room with the giant window at the top. That kid. First of all, salute to his dad for building him that house and that room. Second of all, why would you leave your kid in that room? My God, rich people, man. Rich people, listen. Put a camera in there or something. You can't have your kids in a mansion, in a giant space, nowhere near you, floors away, in the open wilderness. This guy probably lived in the sticks. It's just hunting season for them. Anything that gets in there, it's a wrap for them. This kid woke up to a gray in his room, looking at him, sedating him. That is... I can't even... I legitimately had chills go up my spine when I heard that. That poor child. That story, 100% I believe. Now, my question to you is, do you believe in alien Reddit stories? If so, you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Do it. Do it! It will liberate you. And I'll see you next time on Alien Reddit Stories.